I've talked to some of you outside of class. I've answered some emails, things like that. We should be still coming up with our ideas for idea paper. We need to have this turned in by Tuesday, right, for your initial draft. I assume most of you have already started thinking about things, correct? All right, so what questions do you have for me to point you into the right direction? The goal of our first couple weeks of class is all about getting through these first several documents. So there's really nothing for me to teach you except help you come up with your ideas. So, for instance, you mentioned something that deals with CCNA, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so tell me a little bit more about what you're thinking with that.
I'm thinking more along the lines of like setting up networks and like setting up network topologies to businesses.
Okay.
To use. So like depending on the amount of businesses, depends on the amount of routers and stuff like that.
Okay, now would you actually have a specific client, or would you more or less be going through that exam and creating various network topologies and explaining why you might use the various topologies?
I was thinking more about along clients where we can get some like real world experience.
Okay. Do you know who that would be?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so that's going to become a problem since you have to turn this paper in by Tuesday. So it also might be a problem if you are going to have to spend 3 weeks hunting and pecking looking for a potential client. One thing you might choose to do is along those lines, you might create a series of videos where in each video you describe a particular problem. Maybe you come up with a case study for assuming a client of this size with this problem, blah, blah, blah. Here's the solution for that and why. Then you actually take them through the step-by-step of building the building out that network. Whether you do it in video format, or whether you do it in a series of PowerPoint slides, kind of taking the what you would learn out of the CCNA exam and turning it into kind of a real-life case study tutorial type thing. So your deliverable in that case, you would build out several networks and show the networks were working and things like that. And then you would take those builds and you would apply it to a specific problem. So we might use this topology for this type of situation. Here's why, and here's how to implement that network topology. So that type of thing. What that allows you to do is it allows you to solve the problem you want to do, get some experience in actually doing the thing, but not necessarily have to have a end client. If you could find an end client, great. Then you could actually go and implement. Maybe they become one of your case studies. But what you'll want to do in your idea paper is you're going to want to describe the kind of the scope of this project to some extent. You got to go more than just something with the CCNA. I want to focus on these 5 network topologies, performing a case study on each of these where I build 5 different network topologies, solving 5 different problems, explaining how how those solutions worked and why they were appropriate for that particular problem. Your idea paper should flesh that kind of stuff out. You don't get into the specifics that you get into in the requirements document where you actually get to a very granular level, but that idea paper should give me a pretty good idea of the scope you're shooting for your idea. At the end of reading the idea paper, I should have a very clear idea of how big your project's going to be. Okay, so one thing you might do is before you submit that paper, you might read it yourself and ask yourself, or hand it to one of your friends. Hand the paper to one of your friends, have them read it. If they can explain to you what they think you're saying, and it sounds big enough to you, then it's probably a reasonable idea paper. If they don't have a clue what you're talking about in there, got to go back to the drawing board and the idea paper. The idea paper has to introduce the problem. Okay, so look at these steps here. What's the project? What will it do? Who's it for? Why do they need it? And how does it relate to your degree? So somebody reading your idea paper should be able to spit back out these 5 things to you after reading your paper. If you ask them, what the project is, well, that's probably the most important, right? If they read your idea paper and have no clue what you're saying you're going to do, probably need to write that paper again. Okay? So those are some things to keep in mind. Think about the purpose of that idea paper. It's not just for my benefit. Okay, it's also for the benefit of you and whoever you be presenting the the project to. At the end of the semester, we're going to be standing up here presenting to a group of people, and probably your introduction to that presentation is going to be a summary of your idea paper. So you need to be able to clearly articulate what you intend to do now so that you can actually fulfill it. Okay? The requirements document, the second document you'll be creating after you get your idea paper approved, is going to focus on the actual exact details of what will be required to fulfill the project that you've summarized in the idea paper. Okay? What other ideas do we have that you're looking for some direction on? Go ahead.
I was thinking about doing the chemistry project.
Okay.
I wasn't sure if there was another student who's interested in that. I know that 370, there are going to be some students possibly working in that. And I know some grad students possibly working on it.
Okay.
So I guess my question is if there's anybody else in this class or how I should kind of go about.
Yeah, I get it. So the problem she's talking about is under potential projects, this chemistry department project. This is going to be mostly a programming project, fulfilling something for the chemistry department, and it's there's a requirements document here. You can look through it and see kind of what's needed for that. So if there is somebody, the project could be somewhat large. So one thing she might do is look at a subset of that project to accomplish for her actual project. But if somebody is interested in a programming type project, specifically somebody whose major is computer science, who needs to have the programming component, having two people work on that one project could be beneficial. So is there anybody in here who might be interested in writing some, is it a mobile app? Do they specify? So choose your own adventure for the fate of a cell. Science department needs an interactive choose your own adventure / hierarchy of decisions applications to serve as a learning tool for students inside and outside of the classroom. The app would require either a single student or a team of students to make various decisions about the well-being of a pet cell, organ, body, whatever. So this can be done as a web application or a smartphone application. I think this might be kind of cool actually as like an iPhone app, or an Android app, where you kind of have your pet and you're raising your pet in your phone. So that might be kind of neat for that. So I think that could be kind of a fun project, but the scope of it might be a little bit large for just one person. Is there anybody in here who might be interested in helping out with that project? That would be a programming-centric type thing. No takers? What about you, Dane? Okay, so my gut feeling then is looking at the requirements of this. For your idea paper, pick kind of a subset of them, probably like a minimum viable product. So think about this from the perspective of if we had version 1 of this app, what features does it need to have? And try to hit that sweet spot of, what do you think is big enough for senior seminar versus what's too much? Then the idea is maybe you create the first part of it, and with your documentation, you could either continue on afterwards if you want, or hand it off to somebody else to be able to take it over, or something like that. Maybe that ends up being a grad student or something, but kind of try to get the scope squeezed down into something that you think is doable for the semester. Can that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. But if anybody ends up being interested, I do think it's a cool project. It just would be, a programming type project. I don't know that it's like horrifically complex, but it will be time consuming. What's neat about this project is part of the requirements document is already complete. So you already have that piece of it. On top of that is your deliverable is well defined. You're going to have some kind of program that's going to let you take care of a pet cell. So you don't need to, you know what you're going to be presenting. So this one's probably much more fleshed out than things that you're going to have to really consider what your output might be. Okay, so if you are interested, let me know, and I'll connect you with, or let Val know directly, either one. But we can do this as a 2-person project if you are interested. Otherwise, just shrink it down a little bit to make it make sense. All right, what else? Who already has a project idea? Okay, so comfortable with it? So already working on the idea paper or getting ready to? You're good with yours? Dane, you said you have one? Okay, who doesn't have any idea on what they're going to do? Okay, 1.5 people? Okay, so for the couple of people who have no idea, what have you been kicking around some ideas? What kind of thing do you think you might want to work on?
Well, I recently started helping out with a nonprofit called Family Promise, Washington County, and when I started working with them, they mentioned they might need some IT help
Okay.
in some areas. I just sent out an email this afternoon, like asking for some specifics. I haven't got anything back yet.
Okay.
But I think she has some ideas for it. So.
Okay. So now what I kind of suggested to him was he's looking for projects, and him and I talked earlier, is maybe approach some other businesses, kind of like this, like you're talking about, and trying to get an idea on what their needs are. I use the example with him, maybe go to a dentist's office. If you have a friend of a family or somebody who owns a small or medium-sized business, go there and just say, hey, I have to work on a project for my senior seminar class, deals with technology, IT, something like that. Are there any problems that you see in your business that you think might be able to be streamlined or automated? That might start the discussion. They might say, well, I really wish this, and this worked this way. And then from there, you can try to make a decision as to whether or not that's something you can help with. Maybe it's a digital signage problem. Maybe it's a newsletter, a system for them to send out weekly or monthly newsletters, or allowing people to subscribe to a newsletter or something like that. I mean, the project would probably have to be a little bit bigger than just sending newsletters, but really creating a solution for maybe a marketing campaign for them where they can, create lists, add people to a list, emails get sent out, people can remove themselves from a list, new people can get added to the list, you can create multiple lists, maybe you have 2 or 3 different newsletters. Maybe it's a website that pulls content from maybe a Twitter feed or aggregates some different RSS feeds for news sites or something like that that's appropriate for it, something like that. Creating some sort of automated solution, or at least partially automated solution, that helps them solve some problem that's in the business. All right? And so if you guys can't come up with an idea, maybe go to somebody like that and just say, hey, what would you like to see fixed in your business? Maybe they'll say something that kind of gets you thinking about it. All right, so that was 2 people, so that means everybody else in here already has an idea? Anybody have a weak idea they want to run by me and see if I can get you pushed in the right direction? Are we all confident with it? Okay, so minus those 2 people, we all feel like we'll be able to get an idea paper in by Tuesday? Okay, and one way or another, you guys will find out how to get an idea paper in by Tuesday. Okay, I'm here all weekend, so text me, email me. If you want to get together over the weekend to talk, I can. But it's really important that we flesh out the projects now, because you're going to be stuck with it the rest of the semester. Make sense? Next week's going to be equally important. We're going to come to class on Tuesday. We're going to look through these idea papers and we're going to discuss them. Because between Tuesday and Thursday next week, we want everybody in here to get their idea paper approved. Make sense? Because really what you're going to want to start doing on Tuesday, and for those of you who already have the idea paper done, maybe you even want to get the ball rolling on this, start working on the requirements document. Because the requirements document is due a week from Tuesday. And that's probably a big document. And as I told you last class, the tedious work, let's say, for this course is front-loaded. So you're going to be creating all these documents because the rest of the semester you're going to be spending actually implementing your solution and also evolving those documents. Okay, your initial requirements document is only going to be 70% of what it'll ultimately be. It's going to be the requirements as you initially understand them. As you get into the project, certain requirements are going to creep in. You're going to have to make a decision which things are reasonable requirements that fit within the initial scope that you thought you could finish in a semester, and which things need to go into future requirements where maybe you create an addendum to your requirements document and say, version 2 requested requirements or something like that. That makes sense? Because we've all heard of the phrase feature creep, right? It's the number one reason why projects don't get done on time. Go ahead.
The requirements document, is it like, could you do like list form, or is that?
You could do whatever form makes sense for your particular implementation. You can go online and find, just do a Google search for requirements document template or requirements document examples. There isn't like a set number or type of sections that need to be in this document. The requirements document has a purpose. You should be able to I should be able to look at the requirements document. At the end of it, I should have a crystal clear idea on exactly what you're going to be delivering. Okay, the idea paper gives me the summary of the big idea of your project. If I read that first, now I understand roughly what you're doing. When I look at that requirements document, now I know what widgets, what flashing lights are going to be working on your implementation in the end. Okay, I know exactly what to expect. Now keep in mind that anything that goes in that requirements document, you're going to be held to in the end, right? That's part of what you promised you would deliver. So that makes this an interesting game. You have to promise you'll deliver enough to make it appropriate for the size of a senior seminar project, but don't overpromise, okay? Because you got to get it done in the right amount of time. Make sense? And part of that is also going to be managing that feature creep problem, especially those of you who are working with external clients. You need to make it you need to inform them that it's very important that you capture those initial requirements very accurately, because once they're set in stone, that's what they're going to be getting. And requests, feature creep, things like that are going to have to be handled delicately. If there's something they've asked for and it's something little, maybe you decide it's not a big deal, you throw it in there. But you get death by 1,000 cuts. If they ask for 1,000 little tiny features, all of a sudden you've spent an extra 3 weeks adding things to this project that you never intended to do in the first place. Okay, so in working with clients, it's beneficial for you to set those expectations correctly up front. That way the client understands that it's their responsibility now to make sure that requirements document gets done correctly. They can't throw a curveball at you in 4 weeks that, we want to go a different direction with this. That doesn't work. Does that make sense? So that's part of the experience you're getting out of this, not just working on a big project, but working with a potential client. Somebody who isn't necessarily technical, somebody who doesn't necessarily know how long certain things take. They just think they can snap their fingers and magic happens. Make sense? Okay, but as far as the format of the documents go, I don't really care about what format you use as long as it fulfills its job. That is unambiguously detailing what you will be delivering. Okay? Whereas the idea paper can have some ambiguity to it because it's a lot shorter document, but it should, in broad strokes, give me a pretty clear idea on what you're proposing without getting into the nitty-gritty details. Make sense? So for instance, the idea paper of making lasagna might be, I'm going to make a lasagna with some extra cheese and Italian sausage. Then when you actually give me the recipe for that lasagna, that's going to be the details of the stuff that will actually be in it. The tomato sauce, which maybe we assumed before, that kind of stuff. Okay? So that's kind of the difference between the idea paper and the requirements document. What else? Going once. Going twice. Okay, I'm done. I'll hang out for a few minutes. If you have specific questions about your projects and you want to come up and you didn't want to reveal it to the class, I have nowhere to go. So, but in any case, like I said, contact me by email or text is the best way to reach me. I'll be around all weekend. But make sure you take the idea paper pretty seriously because you want to get that approved as soon as possible. Okay? And if you feel good about your idea paper, you might go ahead and start working on the requirements document. This class, it's kind of good that all the work is, well, not all the work, but the tedious work like this is front-loaded because most of your other classes are just kind of getting rolling. Middle of the semester, when you start having midterms and things like that, that's when you can start making the decision, I'm maybe going to take the week off my project so I can focus on midterms, because you're not going to have homework assignments in here. You're going to have this gigantic assignment you're working on all semester. Make sense? So it also becomes a time management problem. All right, I will see everybody on Tuesday.